Welcome to the next installment of the train Vicar. I'm on the Mainlander train today, travelling between Dunedin and Christchurch. This is a fairly new train connecting the two cities sort of every few weekends and also going further south to Invercargill. So I wanted to experience what it's like and I went on this train trip.
On a Monday morning, the Mainlander arrived at the Dunedin railway station. The passengers were already waiting. On the Friday, it had come from Christchurch to Dunedin, then continued on the Saturday from Dunedin to Invercargill and returned. It had a rest day on the Sunday, and now returned to Christchurch on a Monday. The train was hauled by DC 4375, belonging to Steam Incorporated. The carriages are former British Rail carriages used for a few years on the capital connection between Palmerston North and Wellington, and they have been cleaned up a bit for this service. They are owned by Mainland Rail, and the commercial side of operations is done by Pounamu Tourism. For some reason, Tyree Gorge train was already at the platform, so that Mainlander had to back out after all passengers were on board. And yes, the Mainlander departed from the famous Dunedin railway station, which is one of the most beautiful buildings in New Zealand. It certainly speaks of the importance of rail travel last century.
I don't have a lot of blindside footage for this video, but it'll be more footage from within the train and that reflects what you see as a traveller on trains.
After departure, the Mainlander soon travelled along the Otago harbour, close to the water's edge. It also passed the Ravensbourne fertiliser works, which have a jetty for the discharge of sulphur and other ingredients for fertiliser. At times, there can be quite the stench of sulphur in the air around there. I know because as a student I live in Ravensbourne. It's a nice place with friendly people, but in winter it doesn't get much sun at all. In the middle of winter at 2:30 p.m., for example, I would look with longing over to the Otago Peninsula across the harbour, which was still in the sunlight. As we were making our way on the Mainlander train along the Otago harbour this time, the sun was also quite low on the horizon. Well, that's what it's like in winter here in the south. At Sawyers Bay, the railway line goes up the hill and curves along the hillsides above the bays. And then, after travelling high above the ocean, it finally enters the Cliffs Tunnel. This brings the railway line to Blueskin Bay above Doctor's Point. I regularly caught the Southern train on this route between Dunedin and Timaru when I was a university student at Otago University in the 1990s. If I got a saver fare or even a super saver fare, the train was priced similarly to the bus fare. Of course, I would take the train whenever possible. The train was also one of my favorite places to read books. Normally, I didn't read my course materials on the train, but rather theology books. It was really while I was a student at Otago University that my interest in theology developed. I wanted to know more about the God I believed in, more about faith, and more about our ancestors in the faith. It is probably largely my reading while I was at Otago University that brought me to study theology, and finally, it brought me towards Christian ministry. And the best place to read was the train. This time on the Mainlander, I also read a book, not a theology book, but rather an archaeology book. Still, it was great to again sit on a train and read a book. There's nothing quite that experience. Ah, look, that's a church. It's St. Barnabas in Warrington. The train continues its journey along the Otago coast and a row of small settlements. Oh, there's the Church of Seacliff, a former Catholic church that has been converted to a hospitality venue. The journey from there continues along the coast and passes high above Karitane, where there once was a pub, Maori village, and a whaling station. It was also the site of the first Christian mission in the South Island. I could tell a few stories about that. Oh, wait, another church. This one, an Anglican one, still in use and associated with the Puketeraki Marae. Most of the passengers on the Mainlander are a bit older. There are not many students on the train. After all, it is quite a bit more expensive than the bus and does not run that regularly. And maybe these days students even wouldn't be reading books but be using their phones or electronic notebooks. And then the train doesn't really run along the coast anymore, but rather a bit inland. I wonder what it might take to make this train also accessible to students. It would have to be more affordable, more frequent, and probably a bit faster. After all, the Mainlander takes over 7 hours between Dunedin and Christchurch. The bus takes about 6 hours. Back when I rode the Southerner, it took about 5.5 hours, and today the new Southerner, run by Great Journeys of New Zealand, is scheduled to take just under 6 hours or so. That's because the top speed of the Mainlander is 80 kilometers per hour, so it's a bit slower, and it also has a bit of padding built into the timetable. Oh, another church there. This one is at Maheno. It probably will be difficult to lower the price and increase the frequency of the Mainlander. After all, there's just one carriage set and one locomotive that are used for a variety of journeys, not just the Mainlander. The Mainlander is also clearly aimed at the excursion market, particularly with older Kiwis in mind. And another church is coming into view. This one is St. Luke's Anglican Church in Oamaru, also some people call it Oamaru, with its preserved 19th century limestone architecture, its steampunk culture, and the little blue penguin colony. So Oamaru is quite a bit of a destination in North Otago and worth a visit. It's also the centre of the farming district and retains a bit of a manufacturing activity. So it's an important stop. And then the train heads across the Waitaki River, leaving Otago behind and arriving in Canterbury. Towards the end of the year, the Mainlander will run nearly every week. It is on its way to becoming a regular train. Maybe that can be sustained and even be built on. That would be great. At the moment, going by train is something different and special. I do hope that going by train on the route between Christchurch and Dunedin and from there on to Invercargill will become something more normal again. And then maybe there can be other students reading books on the train. After all, reading books broadens our understanding like few other things do. It's no coincidence that Jews and Christians are called people of the book because they focused on the Bible and through that on reading and understanding books. By now, we are travelling through the South Canterbury landscape with the Hunter Hills in the background. Soon the train arrives in Timaru, where we stopped for half an hour because the train was early arriving into that station. When I travelled on the Southerner in my student days, this is where I got off. The train then travels across the flat Canterbury Plains northwards, but there are quite a few rivers to cross, both large and small. I certainly hope that in some shape or form there will be more regular trains on this route, whether it is the Southerner, the Mainlander, or any new regional service. Having this train here is a start, and I do recommend the ride. In Ashburton, the Mainlander normally crosses a freight train. Soon the train is on the final stretch into Christchurch, and it doesn't have to deal with all the road traffic in the city. Rather, it's got a clear run to the Addington station. Well, until the next time on the Mainlander.